Hi there everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be answering a question from Galan from Spain. He wanted to know how we do our grassland bases, and so I figured I'd do a quick video up on how we put it all together. So you'll see that the colors are, they're kind of muted and brownish down at the bottom, so they match with any kind of mat. We've got the nice contrast of the rocks and all that, and of course the tall grass in there to give it just a little bit extra flavor. We are going to start things off a little bit differently with this one. We're going to spend about a minute or two and just talk about the ideas that inspired these bases, and then we'll move right into the construction of them. So without further ado, here's the video. So for those of you who don't know me personally, I spend a ton of time in the mountains. It's kind of my happy place. And you'll see here in this first photo that this is the type of landscape that I like to hike in. High mountainous terrain, kind of scrabby, a little bit of grasslands here and there. There's always snow kicking around somewhere. But this is where I like to spend a good chunk of my time. So of course you kind of play with what you know. This next picture here, you're going to see that I'm trying to show off basically the type of rocks and dirt and grass and how they kind of work with each other in nature. And this is a picture I took along the trail where I wanted to show the three different layers that I like to have. So you'll see that on the right hand side we've got this kind of padded down dirt kind of layer, and then we've got these small kind of scrabbly rocks that are gathered around. And then on the far left we've got a much larger rock with grass kind of all around it. Now, this is on a trail, so it's kind of tough to see what's going on. So we'll move on to our next photo. And this is what the way foliage kind of grows. The grass kind of grows around the rocks. So there's big rocks that are out there, and of course they're bleached by the sun and the weather and the rain and everything. And the grass and the foliage grows really close to it. And then you get these bare patches of rocks with these kind of larger pieces of rock. And then on the left there, you'll see it actually moves into the dirt. Finally, on this fourth picture, so we've got all of this color, even though it's typically a pretty drab thing when you're talking about the ground, but we've got tons of color and we've got lots of different layers and levels. So we're going to try and incorporate this now into our bases. So what we have here is our three major infantry bases. We have our small, medium, and heavy infantry bases. This is our 25 mil, our 32 mil, and of course our 40 mil for our larger dudes. Now, the other three things we have here are our basing materials that I typically use for all of my bases, essentially. You'll see that we've got the three different levels. We've got the sand, which is regular playground sand. This is for the dirt, the mud, the mire, the gravel inside of a city. We've got this medium ballast here, and I'll throw an image up on the side. Now, the medium ballast that we use is kind of, it would be like a potato-sized rock that you'd find on the ground somewhere, and it gives a little bit larger kind of scale than the sand itself. And you'll also have some big chunks of rock here. Now, these would be small boulders that we'd have sitting on the ground. And these are just from our local playground. This is some of the larger, the playground gravel that they have in there. These are just some of the larger pieces. I sent my kids out to go grab me some as a big secret mission, so it was zero cost. Now, this stuff comes in basically a large spice shaker thing, and it's you get an infinite amount of it. It'll last you forever. The sand can be any kind of playground sand, and you literally will go through a cup of this every 2 years if you are really modeling heavy. So, super, super easy to do. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, instead of just up and gluing the base levels on, normally I would just have the miniature mounted on the model first. But in this case here, just because I want to see it really well, I'm actually going to just leave the miniatures off and just do the bases on their own. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my X-Acto knife here. I'll just move this out of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just score, it's probably tough to see on the camera, but this crosshatch over top. I've had issues in the past where the PVA and the sand would just up and separate, and the newer GW bases, they've got a little bit of a rough texture, which you can kind of hear, but I really like the idea of this cross-hatching, so I just rotated it kind of a quarter turn here, and so you get this crisscrossing effect going on. Probably better to see it lying down. And what that does is it gives the PVA something to grab onto, and that makes a world of difference. Like I said, I've had it literally separate off the models. This is my show-off model here. But I've literally had the sand separate off. And it was a huge mystery to me as how it happened. But essentially, I just cross-hatched, and I haven't had that problem in years and years and years. So I'll cross-hatch these other two bases, and we'll be right back. Now what we're going to do is add our large-scale rocks onto the bases, and I just wanted to show a couple demo models of what I've got in here. Now, anything kind of 25 or 32, I'll just use one large piece. Sometimes I'll use two if I want to sneak one in the back, but I'll put these big rocks in, and again, you want these kind of squared off. Grab one of these here. Some kind of squared off chunky, something that you can actually edge highlight and have it look fairly decent. And what I'll end up doing is I'll just put the one on the smaller bases, so the 25 mils or the 32 mils, and on some of the larger ones I'll use them in pairs just because they would cluster together and it looks a little bit more realistic there. So what I'm going to do is I'll just glue those on first, move that out of the way, and I'm just going to use super glue because rocks do work well with PVA, but for me they I always like to have the super glue on them. It's kind of nice. So I basically, imagining the models on here now, I'll stick this kind of in between his legs, or her legs I guess, and I'll use two levels for the larger one, and you just blob some glue on there. And the other nice thing is with the bases being crosshatched, the glue really has something to stick to, so it's kind of nice. So I'll use kind of 2 or 3 together for the larger base here, and then for the 32, I'll just put one maybe at the front and one maybe at the back. Or off to the side if we wanted to. And if you ever mess up, you can just blob some glue on and have it run down, which is great. And then for the 25, I'll just do either 2 very small ones or 1 larger rock on the flat side down. Alright, I'll let those sit for a bit and I'll be right back for the PVA and the sand. Now that our glue's all set, I'm going to use some bog standard PVA, Elmer's PVA glue here, and I'm just going to coat their base in just a thin coat of PVA. So I'll do that. And then I'm going to take it in my tub of sand, which is the same stuff I have over here. It's always the joke trying to get the glue down. And I'm going to put on a fairly decent amount. It's kind of a weird trick. You got to kind of balance it out. So I do a decent coating around the middle. And then what I'll do is I'll take, this is an old grubby X-Acto blade, and I will just spread this around, making sure I get into all the nooks and crannies. And the second step will be our sand. Now, the reason I do the sand after is because it's a little tricky. The super glue that I used to put down the rocks kind of breaks down the glue, the PVA underneath. So if I do the glue first, the super glue first, then the PVA, I'll be alright. So I'll just take that and I'll toss that in. I'll throw some sand over top. Then I'll give it a quick shake and quick tap. And the other thing I want to do is I just take my thumb and I run it around the bottom of the base. So I'll take my thumb or finger and I'll just run it around the base. Usually it's my thumb. Just trying to make sure I get this on camera here. Alright, and then I'll let that sit. I'll do it on all 3. And we'll be back to do the smaller ballast stuff. Okay, finally now we're going to finish up the last bit of our construction here with our medium ballast, and that is going to be stuck in kind of just kitty corner to each of these rocks here. And you don't have to go overboard with it. You just pick a side of a rock and pile it in. So for the, of course the glue never goes as fast as you want. You find yourself shaking these PVA all the time. So all I'm going to do is just pile a little bit of PVA in there just beside the rock. I'm then going to stick it in, move this back here, into my tub here of the medium ballast. Just tap it in, tap the top off, and just leave that be. If it's piled up a little high, I can just scrape it down the rock just a little bit here. And then I'll set that aside to dry. On the bigger bases as well, shaky, shaky, you can find a nice little spot where, you know, the rocks would collect. Just a little bit of PVA in there, and of course it's just going to stick to wherever the PVA is. And maybe a little bit over here out by its lonesome, And if the model was straddling that spot there, you'd leave the 2 feet. And then with this guy here, I'll just do a little bit on this side. And whatever shape you go with is whatever shape will stick to your PVA. And if I've got a little bit extra here, just dump that in. Super simple, super easy. Alright, so next up I'm going to let these dry for about 2, 3, 4 hours here, and then I'm going to prime them, and then we'll come back and we'll hit up our painting of our grassland bases. Okay, we've let everything dry first, and now we've got it all primed up with our Corax white. Looks really good, lots of variation, and you know, you can see the shadows are doing a lot to kind of help us out here on the different size of features there. So we've got the 3 different sizes, and I'm going to start off with a bit of Tolaran sand just in the muddy, dirty areas here. So I'll work this all the way through, and then we'll get into the rocks. We've got our Tolaran sand all done up there and dried, and now we're going to do all the rocks, even the small ballast, with Administratum Gray, and it's just going to be a straight up coat, making sure that you get into all the kind of nooks and crannies. So take your time, we'll come back and do the ring around the edge, and then we'll wash it. The last piece now before we do our wash is just going to be a ring of Steel Legion Drab just around the base. And that'll finish it off rather nicely. So I'm just going to do, I think, 2 coats of this just to make sure that it's on fairly thick, and then we'll move on to the wash. Alright, we finished off our Steel Legion Drab ring here on the outside, so obviously that's going to give us a little bit of a blend with our terrain. What I love about this color is it actually matches with any of the green mats, the city mats, the brown mats, anything that you're going to be playing on, any kind of terrain, it'll just match right in. So it works so really well for all the tables, really. So the last piece now is I'm going to wash the bases. Now obviously there'd normally be a model sitting on top of this, and then you just kind of wash everything all together. And you'll see in a lot of my other videos, that's kind of how I approach it. And what I'm going to do now is I'll just fire some wash on top of this. Now my wash here is a custom mix. It is gross looking in this bottle, but it's basically 25% Agrax Earthshade, 25% Nuln Oil, and 50% floor wax. And the reason I do the floor wax is it acts as this awesome flow aid where it just kind of sneaks into all the nooks and crannies of the model, and it works really well with the sand as well. So I'll keep washing away here. I'll finish all 3 of these. Now with the wash, I'm going to let it dry for about an hour, maybe 2, just to make sure that when I start dry brushing later on, that it doesn't you know, pick up the paint and smudge everything all over the place. So I'll get going with this, and I'll return directly. Our wash is all nice and dry now, and the next step here is going to be just dry brushing back over with Tolaran sand. Just going to dry brush over top, so I'm going to make sure I get most of the paint off here, and I'm just going to dry brush over top of the Tolaran sand. Now the nice thing about mud is it's kind of streaky, so you can just be a little lazy and go in between and around on these pieces, and it's a pretty quick process. The dry brushing of our Tolaran sand is all done now, so all we have to do is move on with our rocks, and I'm just going to do a very light dry brush of our ballast and our rocks, just kind of focusing on the top edges and making sure I'm very careful around those recessed areas. And now to finish off the painting portion, I'm actually going to go in with our Steel Legion Drab. Grab some chunky Steel Legion Drab here and a bit of water. I'm going to go in with the Steel Legion Drab, and I'm just going to tidy up any little bits where the wash went over. But I'll probably just go around the ring just once more, just to make sure I get that nice even coverage of everything. now that we're essentially finished up with these guys here, we're going to do the flocking. Now I've just got a regular standard static grass here, and it gets everywhere, so I usually keep it in one of the little tubs. And it's just a little guy from IKEA, and I'll need a pair of tweezers and some PVA. So like if we refer back to our pictures, the grass essentially grows wherever there's kind of an open space. So I'm going to get that junk off of that. I'm going to now just throw a little bit of PVA down, and I'm going to do it in between rocks and a little bit on the edge here. Okay, so once I've got that in, then what I'll do is I'll just take my tweezers here, and I'll just clump it up, toss it on top. Just gotta get a good clump of it here. Toss it on top and then tuck it in with the tweezers. So I'll just pile this up over here, and here like this. And then I'll give it a good shake, a little bit of a tap on top here. So I'll just finish tapping that up there, and you'll see that the static grass is now stuck. I'll do a little wipe around the edge here. The static grass is now stuck to that PVA, and the PVA will actually dry clear. If you want it a little more intense, you can just tap it in, tap the top. Now, another technique that people use as well is they'll actually turn it upside down and then they'll blow on it. Now, I have no idea how or why that works, but it seems to stand up the grass without any major issues. And then once you're done with that, you can take a tuft. Now these are Army Painter Battlefield Swamp Tufts, and they're 6 millimeters tall, and they're a nice size. So I open this up here, and all you need to do now, if you want to add to this, is you now take where you've got your big rocks here, where the tufts would kind of grow in. Get that bubble out of there. Then all you need to do now is take a tuft, something a little bit tall. I'm just grabbing my tweezers here. Take a tuft, say this guy here, and then you just kind of stick it right in there. That might be a little too much PVA, so I'll just put a larger tuft in there. And these things are great. They do have an adhesive on the back. However, I really like to just stick it in with PVA. It seems to stick a little bit better, well, once it's dry, I guess. All right, so I'll just leave that in there for a half second so that it sticks. And I'll go through and I'll do the flocking on the rest of the bases, and I'll do the tuft as well, and we will be done. All right, with the static grass and the tufts of grass done, that actually completes our bases. So I just wanted to say to Galan, thanks so much for the question. And if you have any other questions or you want to see anything else, leave them in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, as it really helps get the video out there and it really helps the channel. If you're interested in more videos just like this, please subscribe to get notifications of all of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.